Hello, I'm Lawrence O'Toole. I'm the CEO of Authoritas. We're an SEO software platform that helps clients build better websites for users and search engines and drive organic traffic that converts. Today, I'm here to talk to you about two quick things. One is QuestionHub with Google, which is a new tool Google launched, and it's just rolled out in the US in January 2021, and whether that's any good for SEO and content and editorial teams. And the second aspect, which is what came out of the research into the first, is whether there's any political bias in Google search results. So let's get stuck in. So this is QuestionHub with Google. If you go to questionhub.withgoogle.com, if you're in the United States, India, Indonesia, and Nigeria, you can use it. If you can't, you can join the wait list till it rolls out in your country. If you really can't wait, then look at our blog. There's some instructions on how to get in anyway by using a VPN and pretending you're in the US. What's the purpose of this? Well, Google really is surfacing lots of unanswered questions from its users here, where its algorithm is struggling to understand or interpret what the user's intent is, or where it feels that the quality of the results that it's giving for these questions aren't particularly great. You can search by keyword, and you can get a whole list of different questions that are unanswered. You can then submit either some content on your website or any website that you've connected via Google Search Console, or you can even upload a YouTube video like this one and then submit that to Google. Google will then review that content and decide whether you can, whether it'll index it, and if it does index it, it will give you some performance data about how your content is performing. So it was interesting because when I started to look at this and download some questions from Google Question Hub, you could see I've downloaded thousands of questions on all sorts of different topics, from APIs and Audi and Barclays to concepts like buying new cars or coronavirus and Donald Trump and e-commerce, Elon Musk, even all sorts of different things you can search on, and you will get a set of questions. Here you can see that I've limited them to questions around Google search, because obviously I was trying to work out what unanswered questions consumers have around Google search. It's interesting actually, because you get all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff, and these are some of my favorites, which I've classified as miscellaneous. Google search results are restricted to Earth service. That being said, cheaper to establish our own search engine that operates within Starfleet. It sounds like Captain Kirk and his buddies are going to set up their own competing search engine to Google, which literally would be out of this world. What does the phrase contentious marshmallow not appear in Google search? No idea. Is it a good idea to Google search terms you've come up with while dreaming? Do they mean whilst you're still dreaming, or whilst you've woken up once you've been dreaming? I don't know. Doesn't sound like a great idea. How can I permanently turn off this parental control on my Google search? I'm 43 years old. That sounds worrying. And why? I must live with a very strict mother. Why do Google staff let their wives sleep with other women? Less said about that one, the better. But what's interesting, though, is when you break them down by different types of category, there are a lot of questions around the quality of Google search. You can see 48% of questions around the quality of this a sample of 103 questions I looked at. Some questions around general bias. And then there are a lot of questions which were right-leaning. So they were, from a conservative perspective in the US, asking about why Google was biased in favor of liberal websites to the detriment of of conservative websites. And so I started to explore that in a bit more detail and thought, well, of these 103 questions I've got here, there's a couple of questions around financial bias. Does Google intentionally keep commercial sites out of search results to force them to spend money on Google ads, its biggest revenue source? Does ad size help ranking on Google? And, Google has said time and time again categorically that advertising with it does not improve your performance in organic search. They are like church and state, and it should be separate. So, and certainly we haven't seen any evidence, data-driven evidence to support that actually running ads really does impact your Google organic traffic. Although I'm sure there are lots of people out there, I spoke to one last week, who was advocating that it does have an impact. But what I was more interested in was political bias. I mean, there are general questions about, is Google biased? Is it censoring results? And then there's a lot of questions around, why does Google search results show irrelevant results, or ban or demote conservative websites? So I started to look at the data. And one of the things that I did, we have a Visibility Explorer tool, which tracks automatically millions of keywords, hundreds of millions of keywords in multiple countries worldwide. And that tracks them every month, and that allows us to see which brands are the most visible for a set of keywords. And what's interesting is when you look at all the top 40, I took the top 40 left-leaning US websites. You can see here, so people like democracynow.org, motherjones.com, and then the top 40 right-wing websites like the Drudge Report, Breitbart, etc., etc. You can look at the number of keywords, the number of pages, and overall we have a calculation which is a generally accepted sort of industry calculation of looking at the search volume for every keyword, looking at where a domain ranks, and applying a click-through rate curve, implying that the ones near the top of the results get more clicks than the ones towards the bottom of the results. And overall you can come up with an index, and this index is really just a measure which says that if you have an index score of 808,000, for example, and another one of 81,000, then potentially you're getting 10 times the visibility, the exposure of the site. So in this example, Democracy Now! Would be 10 times more visible and more prominent in Google than IndieWeek. I think what's interesting is when you combine the actual left-wing leaning websites and the right-wing leaning websites, you can actually see that right-leaning websites occupy 6 of the top 10 positions and 13 of the top 20 positions in Google. And overall, it looks like they have almost just over twice the visibility of left-wing leaning websites. So the 28% of those 100 questions of consumers asking, well, why is Google biased in favor of right-wing, left-wing websites? Doesn't really appear to be the case. You can see the red here, the sea of red here, for popular right-wing websites. So what I'd love to do is, and there's a full detail of this on our blog, of course, and you're welcome to look at it, but is really just come back to these questions and try and answer them in this video. So, I've answered the ones around financial bias. I'm really going to concentrate on the ones around the right-leaning bias. So why don't Google search results ever show negative results for Democrats or liberals? Well, they do. Why does Google only show liberal websites, not conservative websites? When doing political search, it doesn't. We've seen that conservative websites are, in fact, more prominent. How can I remove the liberal lies from my Google search results? Google is not peddling liberal lies. It wouldn't make sense for a search engine like Google, especially given the polarization of political opinion in the US, where the country's almost split in half. Why on earth would they try and upset half of their potential constituents and users by being biased against or holding a particular political tone or point of view? Why does Google only show liberal websites, not conservative websites, doing political search? I think I've answered that. How can why do Google searches for information overwhelmingly provide information from left-wing sources? They don't. Why does Google search produce results that are all left-leaning? It doesn't. Why does the conservative treehouse not show up in a Google search? Well, I did a quick search and look, it's top of my listings. If you search for it there, so you've even got some nice site links. So, it really isn't true that there's any particular bias. Why is Google search so biased and left? It isn't. Why do I only get left-wing media when I search Google? You don't. Why do all Google search results lean left and ignore conservative links? They don't. Why are my Google searches only coming up with democratic news sites? They don't. Why do all Google searches lead to liberal articles? What happened to websites? The question doesn't really even make sense, which explains why it's in Google's unanswered question list. Why is it that all Google searches are from liberal sources? They are not. Why is my Google searches hiding the truth about Biden? You could take that either way. Is it hiding? Is it left-wing oriented? And you're saying, they're hiding the good stuff that Biden's doing and they're hiding the truth, or you're right-wing leaning and saying actually it's Biden's up to no good and it's hiding, Google's hiding stuff. I don't think they are. Why do only new liberal news outlets appear in Google search results? They don't. Why are all the political Google search results left-wing biased? They're not. Why is Google unfairly and possibly illegally suppressing conservative websites and articles in their search engine? There's no evidence to support that across millions and millions of keywords. Why is Google search engine not allowing conservative sites, not switching to liberal sites when requesting conservative information? I like the way they spelled sites in that question. It isn't. Does Google censor conservative websites in the search engine? No. Why does my Google search not show conservative news outlets? It probably does. Why does Google search show biased results that promote leftist issues? I don't think they do. Why is it that only liberal publications pop up in Google searches? Well, you can see there that, of the top 80 sites, 40 of each, you can see that actually conservative sites, have predominate. They have more visibility. Why does Google limit search results to liberal websites? It doesn't. How can I have all Biden content removed from my Google search? Well, I'm afraid you can't. Why is Google so liberal when questions are asked on a conservative nature? Google search engine does not address them. Well, probably the actual conservative websites, or websites generally, aren't addressing those questions, which is why Google has this unanswered question product. And really it's a question of, that content's out there. Google will index it as long as, it is, comes from a reasonably authoritative website. And I think the thing really to say here, Google has some search quality guidelines which are published online, and if you want to get your content published, then look at those guidelines, read those guidelines. Those are the guidelines Google gives to its remote workforce that are basically employed to look at search results and deliberate whether they're showing good quality results according to those guidelines. So, I could go on. Oh, there's only a few more. Why not? Why is Google search biased for Democrats? It is not. Why do Google search results have a liberal bias? It doesn't. Why do only leftist opinions show up in Google searches? Well, they don't. And why is Google blacklisting and down ranking conservative sites? And really it doesn't. So hopefully that's answered the question of whether there is a particular bias from Google in its search results. I certainly don't feel there is. You can check yourself. You go to the Authoritas homepage, you can research any domain in multiple countries, click on search, and it will bring you into our visibility tool. And here you can see I've got Breitbart and Democracy Now!, and it's looking at the number of keywords. Democracy Now! Is ranking for 21,000 keywords in this example, and Breitbart over 6,500. And the visibility index is how visible each domain is in Google search. In organic search, we're excluding paid results, and you can see here that both domains are very visible. Breitbart, in fact, is bigger. And actually, if you look at the visibility over time, this is just the last 3 months. And if I just go to a view where you can see the scale, let's get rid of that menu. You can see here that actually from October, November, December, it really is not going up or down particularly. There you go. I've got a view you can see now. Breitbart is slightly up, if anything, and Democracy Now! Went down slightly around the time of the US election, but it's recovered to December 20. Both sites are very visible, and also if you look at the value, this is the commercial value of those keywords. You can see that both have reasonably strong commercial value for the keywords. So that's hopefully answered a whole raft of unanswered questions on Google's Question Hub. I'm going to submit this video to Google's Question Hub with a hope that it will rank the content as part of my experiments. If you're looking for more details on Google Question Hub, then I've done some in-depth analysis on the Authoritas blog, and there's also some facts and data around the research into political bias. That's all for now. This has just been a fun diversion from real work for me for a couple of hours, and now I have to get back to building SEO software, which is what we love. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.